smile, the stranger whispered. If they realize you're alone, neither of us is getting out of here. Madeline Carter froze. The words came from a man she had never seen before, yet his arm was already around her shoulders as if they had known each other for years. Around them, lantern light flickered across the crowded Moonfall Festival, painting the cobblestone streets in shades of gold and amber. Music drifted through the cool autumn air. Laughter echoed from every direction. To anyone watching, they looked like an ordinary couple enjoying the celebration. But Madeline's heart hammered so hard she could barely breathe. Just seconds earlier, she had been running. She had slipped through narrow alleyways and crowded market stalls, trying to put distance between herself and the men searching for her. She didn't know exactly who had sent them. She only knew what she had overheard that afternoon inside the packed council hall. Her name, her future, her freedom, traded away like a bargaining chip in a deal she had never agreed to. By sunrise, she was supposed to belong to a powerful alpha from a neighboring territory. No one had bothered asking what she wanted. As an Omega with no influential family and no powerful wolf, her opinion meant very little. So she ran. And now somehow she had ended up standing beside a complete stranger whose presence felt far too calm for a man surrounded by danger. Don't look behind you, he said quietly. Keep smiling. Madeline's fingers tightened around the edge of her cloak. Who are you? She whispered. Someone trying to help. Why? The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Because those men have been following you for 6 blocks. Her stomach dropped. 6 blocks. She had been so focused on escaping that she never noticed. The stranger guided her forward through the crowd. His movements were relaxed, almost effortless. Yet every few seconds his silver-gray eyes swept across the festival as if measuring every person and every exit. Something about him felt different. Dangerous, but not in the way she feared. More like standing near a storm hidden behind clear skies. They passed food vendors selling roasted chestnuts and apple pastries. Children darted between families carrying glowing lanterns shaped like wolves and moons. The festival should have felt warm and welcoming. Instead, Madeline felt trapped inside a maze with invisible walls closing around her. There, the stranger murmured. 3 o'clock. Against her better judgment, she glanced sideways. 3 men stood near a fountain across the square. They weren't looking directly at her, but she knew immediately they were searching. One pointed toward the crowd. Another scanned faces. Her pulse spiked. The stranger gently turned her head forward again. I told you not to look. They found me. Not yet. How can you be so sure? Because if they had, we wouldn't still be standing here. His confidence made no sense. Yet somehow it steadied her. They continued walking. The stranger's pace never changed. He didn't hurry. He didn't panic. He moved like a man who expected the world to move around him. Madeline noticed other things too. The broad shoulders beneath his dark coat. The faint scar near his jaw. The way people unconsciously stepped aside without realizing they were doing it. Even the loudest festival goers seemed to quiet when he passed. It was subtle, almost impossible to notice. But once she saw it, she couldn't ignore it. You're not from around here, she said. No merchant, no guard. Another faint smile. Definitely not. That answer raised more questions than it solved. Ahead, the crowd thickened around the festival's central plaza where musicians played beneath strings of lanterns. The stranger slowed. For the first time, tension appeared in his eyes. Listen carefully, he said. The men looking for you are about to reach this side of the square. Fear crawled through Madeline's chest. What do? We give them something else to see. Before she could ask what he meant, he stepped closer. Not enough to make her uncomfortable. Just enough to make them appear familiar. Comfortable together. Believable. From this moment on, he said softly, you know me. Madeline stared at him. What? You trust me? I don't. For the next 10 minutes, you do. The music swelled around them. Somewhere nearby, a bell rang to mark the beginning of the festival's moonlight ceremony. The stranger's gaze lifted toward the approaching figures moving through the crowd. Then he looked back at her. Calm. Steady. Certain. Can you pretend? He asked. Madeline followed his eyes and saw the 3 men drawing closer. Her choices vanished in an instant. Run and be caught. Or trust a stranger. She swallowed hard. Pretend what? His expression never changed. That you're my partner. Madeline stared at him as the noise of the festival seemed to fade into the background. Pretend you are my partner. The words should have sounded ridiculous. Instead, they sounded like her only chance. She forced herself to nod. Fine, she whispered. I can pretend. Good, the stranger replied. Because they are almost here. He guided her toward the center of the plaza where dozens of couples had gathered beneath strings of glowing lanterns. Musicians played a lively melody while dancers moved across the stone square. The crowd became thicker, making it harder for anyone to track a single face. Madeline tried to steady her breathing. You still have not told me your name. Damien. Just Damien? For tonight, that is enough. The answer should have annoyed her. Instead, she found herself watching the way he scanned every corner of the plaza. Nothing escaped his attention. It was as if he could feel movement before it happened. They stopped near a fountain where silver water reflected the lantern light. Damien picked up 2 cups of warm cider from a nearby vendor and handed one to her. Drink. I am not thirsty. You look terrified. Madeline glanced down at the cup. He was right. Her hands were trembling. She took a small sip. The warmth helped. Across the square, she spotted the 3 men again. They were closer now, weaving through the crowd. One of them paused and looked directly in her direction. Her stomach tightened. Damien stepped slightly in front of her, blocking the line of sight. Keep walking, he said quietly. Do not look at them again. You keep giving orders. And you keep surviving because you listen. To her surprise, a faint laugh escaped her. The sound felt strange after the longest day of her life. Damien looked down at her. For the first time, she noticed something unexpected in his expression. Not amusement. Relief. As though hearing her laugh mattered more than it should. They continued through the festival grounds. Everywhere they went, people seemed to move aside without realizing it. An elderly vendor straightened immediately when Damien approached. A pair of guards stepped back to clear a path. Neither interaction lasted more than a second, but Madeline noticed. Do you know everyone here? She asked. No. Then why do they act like they know you? Damien took a moment before answering. People react to confidence. That is not confidence. What is it then? Madeline searched for the right word. Power. The thought arrived before she could stop it. There was something powerful about him. Not loud or arrogant. The opposite. Quiet power. The kind that never needed to announce itself. Before she could respond, a sudden bell echoed across the festival. The crowd began moving toward a large stage at the far end of the plaza. What is happening? She asked. The moonlight ceremony, Damien said. His voice became noticeably more serious. We should leave. Why? For the first time all evening, Damien looked genuinely concerned. His silver-gray eyes fixed on something beyond her shoulder. Madeline turned. At the edge of the square, several riders had just arrived. They wore dark cloaks marked with a crest she recognized immediately. The royal crest. Around them, people were already bowing their heads. A whisper spread through the crowd like wind through autumn leaves. Someone important had arrived. Very important. Damien exhaled slowly. That, he said, taking her hand before she could ask another question, is exactly why we need to go now. Madeline barely had time to react before Damien led her away from the plaza. The music of the festival faded behind them as they slipped into a quieter street lined with stone buildings and glowing shop windows. People continued moving toward the moonlight ceremony, leaving the side roads nearly empty. You still have not explained why the royal guards arriving is a problem, she said, trying to keep pace with him. Because crowds become unpredictable when important people appear, Damien replied. And unpredictability is rarely helpful. Madeline frowned. That answer sounded carefully chosen, as if he were avoiding a much larger truth. They crossed a narrow bridge over a stream that wound through the town. Moonlight shimmered across the water like liquid silver. For a moment, everything felt peaceful. Then she noticed Damien glance behind them. Just once. It was enough. They are still following us, are they not? She asked quietly. He did not answer immediately. A few people seem unusually interested in where we are going. Her heart sank. This is my fault. No, his response came so quickly that it surprised her. You did not choose any of this. Madeline looked away. Earlier that morning, she had believed her biggest problem was being trapped in a future she never wanted. Now she was hiding from strangers beside a man she barely knew. The entire world felt different from the one she had woken up in. They reached the edge of town nearly 20 minutes later. A small inn sat beside the road leading north, its windows glowing warmly against the darkness. A wooden sign swayed gently in the breeze. Damien stopped. We are staying here tonight. Together? The question escaped before she could stop it. One corner of his mouth lifted. The innkeeper is more likely to trust a couple than two strangers traveling separately. Madeline felt her cheeks warm slightly. Right. The act, Damien agreed. Yet something about the way he said it made her uncertain. Inside, the inn smelled of fresh bread and cedar wood. Travelers filled several tables near the fireplace. Conversations buzzed softly through the room. The elderly innkeeper looked up as they entered. Before Madeline could say a word, Damien rested a hand lightly against her shoulder. "Long journey," he said. "My partner and I could use a room for the night." The innkeeper smiled immediately. "Of course." Madeline blinked. That was all it took. No questions. No suspicion. She suddenly understood why Damien had insisted on the disguise. People saw what they expected to see. A tired couple traveling together attracted no attention at all. Minutes later, they climbed a staircase to the second floor. The room was simple but comfortable. A fireplace crackled softly in the corner. One window overlooked the road. Madeline set down her cloak and finally allowed herself to relax. For the first time all day, she felt safe. Damien moved toward the window and looked outside. His expression became thoughtful. "What is it?" she asked. "Nothing." That was not convincing. He glanced back at her. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then a distant sound drifted through the night. Hoofbeats. Multiple riders approaching. Damien's gaze sharpened instantly. The calm traveler vanished, replaced by someone alert and focused. Someone used to command. Madeline felt a chill run down her spine. "Damien," she whispered. "Who exactly are you?" Outside, the riders came to a stop directly in front of the inn. The hoofbeats echoed through the night before finally falling silent. Madeline stood motionless in the center of the room while Damien remained near the window. The fire crackled softly behind them, but the warmth no longer reached her. Something had changed. She could feel it. A moment ago, he had looked like an ordinary traveler. Now he seemed entirely different. Sharper, more alert, more dangerous. Not because he appeared threatening, but because every movement suddenly carried purpose. "Damien," she said again. "Who are you?" He watched the road below for several seconds before answering. "Someone with complicated problems." "That is not an answer. It is the only one I can give right now." Madeline folded her arms. Normally, she would have let the conversation drop. Normally, she would have avoided conflict. But nothing about this situation was normal. People move out of your way without realizing it. Guards make room for you. The innkeeper trusted you instantly. Now riders arrive in the middle of the night, and you suddenly look like you expected them. Damien turned toward her. The firelight reflected in his silver-gray eyes. "You notice more than most people. That is because most people are not hiding whatever you are hiding." For a moment she thought he might actually tell her the truth. Instead, a faint smile appeared. "Fair point." A knock sounded at the door. 3 measured taps. Damien's expression immediately became unreadable. "Stay here," he said. Before Madeline could object, he crossed the room and opened the door. A man wearing a dark traveling cloak stood outside. He appeared to be in his 40s with streaks of silver in his hair. The moment he saw Damien, relief flashed across his face. Then he lowered his head respectfully. Too respectfully. Madeline noticed. So did Damien. "You should not be here," Damien said quietly. "Neither should you," the man replied. Yet here we are. Their conversation continued in low voices, but Madeline caught fragments. Reports. Routes. Delays. Security. None of it sounded like the concerns of ordinary merchants. After several minutes, the visitor handed Damien a sealed envelope. Damien accepted it without hesitation. "Tomorrow morning," the man said. "No later." Damien nodded once. The visitor left. The door closed. Silence returned. Madeline stared at the envelope in Damien's hand. "A friend?" she asked. "Something like that. Do all your friends bow when they see you?" For the first time all evening, Damien looked genuinely surprised. Then he laughed softly. "You notice that too?" "I notice everything when my life depends on it." The answer seemed to impress him. He placed the envelope on a nearby table, but did not open it. "You should get some rest. And you should stop changing the subject." Damien looked toward the window again. Outside, the riders were already leaving. The road gradually emptied until only moonlight remained. "Madeline," he said quietly, "have you ever met someone and realized they are not who they appear to be?" She frowned. "I think I am experiencing that right now." Another smile touched his face, but this one carried sadness. "Then perhaps you understand more than you realize." Before she could ask what he meant, a distant church bell rang midnight across the town. Damien's eyes lifted toward the sound. Something about it seemed to trouble him. And for the first time since they met, Madeline wondered if the people searching for them were not looking for her at all. She looked at the sealed envelope, then at the mysterious man standing beside the window. A chilling thought slowly formed in her mind. What if Damien was the one everyone was hunting? Madeline barely slept. Long after the inn had fallen silent, She remained awake in the chair beside the fireplace, watching shadows dance across the room. Every time she closed her eyes, the same question returned. Who was Damien really? By dawn, pale sunlight spilled through the window and painted the floor in soft gold. The town outside was beginning to wake. Wagons rolled along the road. Shopkeepers opened shutters. Somewhere below, someone laughed. The ordinary sounds should have been comforting. Instead, they made the mystery beside her feel even larger. Damien was already awake. He stood near the window with a cup of coffee in one hand, his attention fixed on the distant hills. Do you ever sleep? Madeline asked. Sometimes. That sounds like a no. A faint smile appeared. I have had busy years. She studied him carefully. In daylight, he looked different. Less mysterious. More human. Yet somehow that only made the questions worse. The scars near his jaw were easier to see now. So were the small signs of exhaustion around his eyes. Whatever burden he carried, it was clearly heavy. What happens next? She asked. Damien remained quiet for a moment. We leave town. Where are we going? North. That is not a destination. It is enough of one for now. Madeline sighed. You answer questions like a man hiding state secrets. The comment earned an actual laugh this time. Deep and genuine. The sound surprised both of them. For a brief moment, the tension that had followed them since the festival seemed to disappear. Then Damien's expression softened. You know, he said, most people would have left by now. Most people were not sold into a future they never chose. His smile faded. Fair point. Silence settled between them again. Not uncomfortable silence. Something easier. Something calmer. Madeline realized she no longer felt afraid around him. Confused, absolutely. Frustrated, often. But not afraid. That realization should have worried her. Trust was dangerous, especially when it arrived this quickly. Yet every instinct she possessed told her Damien was not her enemy. A knock interrupted the moment. Both of them looked toward the door. This time there was no urgency, no tension, only the innkeeper carrying a breakfast tray. Fresh bread, eggs, fruit. As the elderly man set the tray down, his eyes briefly moved toward Damien. For a split second his expression changed. Respect. Not admiration. Not friendliness. Respect. Then it vanished. Safe travels, the innkeeper said before leaving. The door closed. Madeline stared after him. There it is again. Damien looked up from the table. What? That look. What look? The one people keep giving you. He did not answer. Madeline walked toward the window. Outside, travelers moved through the town square. Merchants arranged displays. Children chased one another across the cobblestones. Everything appeared normal. Then she noticed something at the far end of the street. A large banner hanging from a government building. The royal crest. Her eyes narrowed. She had seen that symbol her entire life. Every citizen had. Suddenly, a strange memory surfaced. The silver gray eyes. The effortless authority. The way trained guards instinctively stepped aside. The respect people could not quite hide. Her pulse quickened. Slowly, she turned toward Damien. At that exact moment, a folded newspaper on a nearby table shifted in the morning breeze. The front page turned upward. A portrait stared back at her. Madeline's breath caught. The illustration showed a man with silver gray eyes. Madeline stared at the newspaper as if it might change if she looked away. It did not. The portrait remained the same. Strong features, dark hair, silver gray eyes. Beneath the illustration was a headline she could barely process. Alpha King Damien Blackwood attends Northern Summit. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Slowly, very slowly, she lifted her gaze from the page and looked across the room. Damien stood by the window exactly where he had been a moment earlier. Calm, composed, silent, as though the entire world had not just shifted beneath her feet. No, she whispered. The word escaped before she could stop it. Damien closed his eyes briefly, not in surprise, in resignation. He already knew. He knew she had figured it out. Madeline, hearing her name in his voice somehow, made everything worse. You are him. She could not even bring herself to say the title. You are the Alpha King. Silence filled the room. Then Damien nodded once. The simple movement felt louder than any confession. Madeline stepped backward. Her thoughts scattered in every direction. The Alpha King, the most powerful ruler in the Northern Territories. The man whose decisions affected entire packs. The man whose name appeared in every official decree. The man she had spent 2 days arguing with, questioning, and accusing of being mysterious. You lied to me. Damien's expression tightened. I withheld the truth. That is the same thing. Not always. It feels the same. He accepted that without argument. Somehow that frustrated her even more. Madeline looked away and paced toward the fireplace. Every strange detail suddenly made sense. The guards, the respect, the riders arriving in the night, the sealed messages, even the way people unconsciously moved aside when he entered a room. None of it had been coincidence. Why? She asked. Why pretend to be someone else? Damien walked toward the table but kept a respectful distance. Because there are people who would prefer I never reach the summit. The men following us. Some of them. And the rest. A shadow crossed his face. The rest are more complicated. Madeline let out a breath. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt strangely betrayed. Not because he was powerful. Because he had trusted her with everything except the truth. You could have told me. Could I? His question stopped her. Think about the night we met. You were running for your freedom. You trusted no one. If I had introduced myself as the Alpha King, would you have believed anything I said? Madeline opened her mouth, then closed it again. The answer was obvious. No. She would have assumed he was manipulating her, using her, controlling the situation for reasons she could not understand. I needed to know who you were, Damien said quietly. Not who people expected you to be. She stared at him. The honesty in his voice caught her off guard. For the first time since finding the newspaper, she saw something beyond the title and the crown. Exhaustion, loneliness, responsibility, the weight of carrying an entire kingdom. Then a sudden commotion echoed from outside. Voices filled the street below. Multiple voices. Damien moved instantly toward the window. His expression sharpened. Madeline crossed the room and looked out beside him. Her stomach dropped. The town square was filling with riders. Not a few. Dozens. And at their head rode a man wearing the royal colors. As the riders stopped in formation, the man dismounted and looked directly toward the inn. Then he dropped to one knee in the middle of the street. Every rider behind him did the same. Damien's jaw tightened. Madeline's heart skipped a beat. The entire town was about to learn exactly who had been hiding in their midst. Madeline could only stare through the window as the riders remained kneeling in the town square. The morning bustle had vanished. Merchants froze beside their stalls. Travelers stopped in the middle of the street. Conversations died almost instantly. An uneasy silence spread across the town as people tried to understand what they were seeing. They found you, Madeline whispered. Damien kept his eyes on the square below. They were never searching for me. Then why are they here? Because they are supposed to be. His calm response only deepened her confusion. The man at the front of the formation finally rose to his feet. Even from the second floor, Madeline could see the respect in his posture. This was not a search party. This was something else entirely. Who is he? She asked. My chief advisor, Damien replied. His name is Victor Hale. Madeline looked back toward the street. Victor appeared impatient. Not angry. Concerned. As if he had spent days looking for someone who should never have disappeared in the first place. A moment later, the front door of the inn opened downstairs. Voices drifted upward. Footsteps followed. Several sets. Damien exhaled slowly. This is going to become difficult. Difficult. Madeline turned toward him. Your entire royal court appears to be outside. A faint smile touched his face. Exactly. The footsteps climbed the staircase. Seconds later, a respectful knock sounded at the door. Damien opened it before anyone could knock again. Victor stood outside accompanied by 2 royal guards. The moment he saw Damien, visible relief crossed his features. Your Majesty, he said. The summit begins tomorrow. I am aware. Victor glanced past him and noticed Madeline standing near the window. Surprise flickered across his face. Then curiosity. Then something else. Recognition. So she is real. Damien's expression hardened slightly. Victor. I apologize. Victor immediately straightened. The council has been asking questions. Madeline frowned. Questions about what? Neither man answered immediately. That silence told her everything. The questions were about her. Victor finally cleared his throat. There have been rumors. What kind of rumors? Madeline asked. Victor looked uncomfortable. That the Alpha King vanished for 3 days and returned accompanied by a mysterious young woman. Madeline nearly laughed from disbelief. That is the rumor? Among many others. Damien rubbed a hand across his forehead. This is exactly why I wanted privacy. Victor nodded sympathetically. Unfortunately, privacy no longer exists. Madeline watched the exchange carefully. Something felt different now. Earlier, she had only seen Damien as a mysterious traveler. Then she had seen him as a king. Now she was seeing something else. A man surrounded by expectations he could never escape. Every decision was observed. Every absence noticed. Every personal choice discussed by strangers. The realization stirred unexpected sympathy. Victor handed Damien another sealed envelope. There is one more issue. Damien accepted it. What issue? Victor hesitated. Several regional leaders have arrived earlier than expected. The room became very quiet. How many? Damien asked. 8. Even Madeline knew that number was significant. Victor lowered his voice. And 2 of them are demanding a private audience with you immediately. Damien looked toward the window. His expression grew unreadable once again. They think they know why I disappeared, he said quietly. Victor nodded. Madeline felt a chill travel down her spine. Whatever explanation those leaders had invented, she suddenly had a feeling she was standing at the center of it. Madeline spent the next hour feeling as though she had been swept into someone else's life. The quiet in room had transformed into a place of constant activity. Advisors arrived. Messengers delivered documents. Guards waited outside. Through it all, Damien remained calm, handling every responsibility with the same steady confidence she had seen since the night they met. Yet something about him seemed different now. The mask was gone. There was no more pretending to be an ordinary traveler. He stood straighter, spoke with greater certainty. Every person who entered the room listened when he spoke. And somehow, despite everything she had learned, Madeline found herself missing the simpler version of him. The man who had shared cider with her at the festival. The man who had laughed when she accused him of hiding state secrets. By afternoon, preparations were underway to leave for the summit. Carriages lined the street below. Royal banners fluttered in the breeze. The entire town seemed determined to catch a glimpse of their king before he departed. Madeline stood near the window watching the commotion when Damien joined her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. You have been quiet, he finally said. I am trying to adjust. To what? She turned toward him. To discovering that the man I trusted happens to rule half the continent. A shadow of regret crossed his face. Madeline, do not. He stopped immediately. I am not angry because you are king, she continued softly. I am angry because I thought I knew you. Damien looked away toward the square below. That is fair. The simple acceptance caught her off guard. No excuses. No arguments. Just honesty. Then tell me something truthful, she said. No titles. No politics. Just the truth. His eyes met hers. For several seconds the noise from outside seemed to disappear. The truth is that meeting you was never part of any plan. Madeline felt her breath catch. Damien stepped closer, though still leaving space between them. The truth is that I should have left after helping you that night. He paused. And the truth is that I did not want to. Her heart suddenly felt much too loud. Why? The question came out barely above a whisper. Damien's expression softened. Because for the first time in years, someone spoke to me like a person instead of a king. Neither moved. Neither looked away. The moment stretched between them, fragile and unfamiliar. Then a sharp knock broke the silence. Victor entered without waiting long enough for permission. One look at their faces told him he had interrupted something important. To his credit, he pretended not to notice. Your Majesty, he said. The council has arrived. Damien straightened immediately. Duty returned like a wall between them. I will be there shortly. Victor hesitated. There is one more matter. What is it? Victor glanced toward Madeline. Several council members believe the rumors. Damien's expression darkened. Which rumors? Victor cleared his throat. That the woman traveling with you is not merely a companion. Silence filled the room. Madeline felt heat rise to her cheeks. Damien, however, looked completely serious. And what exactly do they believe? Victor answered carefully. They believe she may be the future Luna of the Northern Territories. The room fell completely silent after Victor's words. Madeline felt as though every sound in the world had vanished at once. Future Luna of the Northern Territories. The phrase seemed impossible. Ridiculous. She was an Omega who had spent most of her life being overlooked. Just a few days earlier, powerful people had been deciding her future without even asking her opinion. Now members of the Royal Council were discussing her as though she belonged beside the most powerful alpha in the kingdom. Victor shifted awkwardly beneath the silence. I should probably clarify that these are only rumors. A wise clarification, Damien replied dryly. Victor nodded immediately. Of course. Yet the damage had already been done. The words lingered in the air long after Victor excused himself and left the room. Madeline remained near the window while Damien stood beside the door. Neither seemed certain how to continue the conversation. Outside, preparations for departure continued. Royal banners snapped in the breeze. Horses stamped against the cobblestones. Advisors crossed the square carrying stacks of documents. Life moved forward whether they were ready or not. You should go, Madeline finally said. Damien looked at her. Go. The summit. She forced a small smile. Apparently kingdoms do not govern themselves. His expression softened. And what about you? The question surprised her. What about me? Where will you go? Madeline opened her mouth, but no answer came. For the first time since escaping her pack, she realized she had no destination. She had spent every moment focused on survival. She had never planned beyond that. Damien seemed to understand immediately. Then come with us. Her heart skipped. To the summit? Yes. As what? The question hung between them. Companion. Guest. Friend. None of the answers felt large enough anymore. Damien took a slow breath. As someone important to me. Madeline looked away before he could see the emotion in her eyes. The truth was becoming impossible to ignore. Somewhere between the crowded festival and the quiet in-room, everything had changed. Trust had become friendship. Friendship had become something deeper. Something neither of them had intended. Hours later, the royal procession departed. The journey north took them through forests painted gold by autumn and rolling hills that stretched for miles beneath clear blue skies. Everywhere they traveled, people gathered to watch their king pass. Children waved from fences. Families stood outside small shops. Farmers paused in open fields. And through it all, Madeline watched Damien. Not the Alpha King. The man. The one who remembered names. The one who stopped to speak with villagers. The one who carried responsibility with quiet patience instead of pride. By the time they reached the summit grounds, the sun was setting. Hundreds of lanterns illuminated the enormous conference hall. Leaders from every major territory had already arrived. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. As Damien stepped from the carriage, every conversation seemed to pause. Respect rippled through the crowd. Then something unexpected happened. Several eyes shifted toward Madeline. Recognition spread. Whispers followed. The rumors had arrived before they had. Madeline felt her confidence falter. She suddenly became aware of every difference between herself and the elegant nobles surrounding her. She did not belong here. Damien seemed to sense her uncertainty immediately. Without hesitation, he stepped beside her. Look at me, he said quietly. She did. You belong wherever you choose to stand. The simple words steadied her more than he could possibly know. Together they entered the hall. The evening passed in a blur of introductions, meetings, and formal ceremonies. Yet through all of it, Damien never allowed distance to grow between them. Not once. Near midnight, the summit's opening gathering finally concluded. Guests drifted toward balconies overlooking the mountains. Music floated through the cool night air. Stars filled the sky above. Madeline stood alone for a moment near the edge of the terrace, taking in the view. Beautiful, is it not? A woman's voice asked. Madeline turned. A stranger stood nearby. Elegant. Graceful. Perhaps in her early 40s. There was something strangely familiar about her. It is, Madeline replied. The woman smiled softly. Her eyes lingered on Madeline's face for a moment longer than expected. Then the smile faded into something almost emotional. You have your mother's eyes, she whispered. Madeline froze. Every thought disappeared at once. What did you say? The woman stepped backward. Forgive me. Wait. But the stranger was already turning away into the crowd. Madeline's heart pounded as she stared after her. Because for the first time in years, someone had spoken about the mother she had lost. And somehow, impossibly, that woman had looked at her as if she already knew exactly who she was.